Okay guys, up next we are pitting the Bantam up against the mighty Metanium MGL, and we are starting off with those 1/4 ounce square bills. Now strangely enough, I was not able to go down as low on the brakes on the Metanium. I have 4 on inside, but on the external dial I had to go to 2. So let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. Now the wind's died down, as you can see, and the water is just glassy smooth. So I don't think the distances are going to be as good, but let's see. Okay, so that probably went about 10 feet past that sign. Okay, that went about another, almost 10 feet past that sign. Okay, let's do a couple of sidearm. Okay, I say that's going about 35 yards. Okay, consistently hitting about 10 feet past that sign there. Okay, let's see what this Bantam can do. But one more cast on the Metanium. Okay, I say that went about 40 yards. Try out this Bantam again. Brake setting the same, 4 on inside, 1 on the external dial. Okay, that easily matched the distance of the Metanium. I don't know if it's the lower retrieve ratio, but it's definitely got more power burning this little square bill in. Okay, looks like the Bantam is easily matching the Metanium in distance with this little 1/4 ounce square bill. Easily matching it. So I don't think you're really going to see that much of a difference in distance unless you're going probably under a 1/4 of an ounce to basically almost bait finesse levels. Okay, let's change up to the 1/2 ounce top water. Okay, we are back to the JACKALL Mudsucker 110. I turned 1 brake off, so there's 3 brakes on inside, leaving the external dial on 1. Spool tension is loose, of course. Man, that was in the air so long. Yeah, that had to have been at least 50 yards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to aim for that tree that's directly ahead of us. You can see the bottom part of it across the way on the opposite bank. God, I hate reeling all this line in. Especially with this short handle. Makes my deltoid burn. Okay, a couple more casts. Okay, you see it overrun on the back end of the cast, so I'm going to turn the brakes up externally from 1 to 2, and that ought to solve that. Okay. You can see that solved that overrun problem on the tail end of the cast. Okay, one more cast, and then we're going to try that Metanium. Okay, Metanium with a JACKALL mudsucker. I might be able to go to 1 on the external dial. Good Lord. I almost dumped all the line off. It almost went to the other side into those trees. So the Metanium is starting to show why it costs more. And it's showing the engineered performance advantage that Shimano gave it over the Bantam and the Chronarch. Okay, let's go to 1. See if that'll if it'll let me. Okay, shouldn't have did that. Maybe 1.5. Now, if it can consistently almost hit the other side, then definitely the Metanium is the better caster. Okay, let's burn this in real quick. And you can definitely tell the difference in weight when I'm working this lure. Now, this rod is super heavy, but okay, I'm going to turn the dial to 1.5. Ooh. Yeah, there's no doubt this Metanium casts this top water farther than the Bantam or the Chronarch. No doubt about it at all. Okay, one more time. Shit. Okay, one more time, just because that's so fun launching this out there. In fact, I'm going to go to 2. Just to see if curing that overrun in the middle will give it more distance. Just for curiosity's sake. Okay. A little bit short there, but still easily matching the Bantam. One more cast and then we're going to start pitching that jig. Okay guys, I have the jig tied on. I turned all 4 brakes on inside and I got 3 on the external dial. Let's see if this thing pitches any farther. Nope, looks about the same to me. Okay, that went a little bit farther. It's about 15 yards, I guess. Now another question is it pitching any easier? Is the light spool making it easier to pitch this thing? Not sure yet. So I'm hitting roughly around the same spot. Now if I get a higher trajectory, of course it's getting out there a little farther. Just like that. But not seeing a major difference from what I can remember the Chronarch or the Bantam hitting as far as distance. Okay. So I'm going to drag this on the bottom and see if I can feel any kind of sensitivity differences that I felt with the Chronarch versus the Bantam. So I'm dragging this jig. I don't really feel much at all. I don't even feel any lumps. Let's try again. Okay, I'm starting to feel lumps now. Okay, I felt a little tick there. Probably hit some kind of wood. Now there are a lot of turtles in here, and I know they will go after your lures. So I don't know if that's turtles that I feel. Okay, I'm feeling some ticks down there. There's a definite difference between the tick and the kind of little vague bump when you're hitting a muddy lump or something. But still, I don't feel as much as I did with the Chronarch. And I'm pretty sure I'm dragging it over the exact same spots. Okay, feeling something now. So when I go really, really slow, I can definitely feel, now I can feel what I was feeling with the Chronarch. Okay, one more time and then we'll try with the Bantam, see if we can feel any difference. I'm gonna slow it down really good now. Didn't feel as much that time. Okay, let's try with the Bantam. Okay, do you guys see any kind of difference in pitching distance? Looks about the same to me. Now maybe if I had a really light jig, maybe like a total of 1/4 ounce, you might see a difference between the two. But since this thing is probably almost 3/4 ounce, you're probably not going to see much of a difference. Wow, what was that? So I should have brought something lighter to pitch. Okay, let's drag this thing on the bottom. See if we see any kind of difference. I'm going to slow down a lot. Okay, I'm feeling lumps. I don't feel any ticks yet. Okay, I feel a couple of ticks there. Okay, so it's positively, I should say I'm positively sure that I felt more with the Chronarch dragging this jig on the bottom than I did with these two, the Bantam and the Metanium. Okay, one more time and I am getting out of this sun. Okay, feeling something through the line, but it's way more pronounced. It's almost like the line is vibrating, but you could feel it a lot more with the Chronarch. Ooh, what am I doing? I'm going. Okay guys, I'm gonna get back home and I'm going to do a ending tabletop and give you my final thoughts on these 3 reels out on the water. Okay guys, so I am back from the on the water portion of this video, and yeah, let's go over my findings and thoughts. Now, to be honest, when I first thought of this video and went out on the water, I totally expected the Metanium to comfortably outcast the other two, you know, not by a lot, but just noticeably outcast the two. And it was only half of that, I guess. And I'll go over that in just a minute. Now, before we go over that, I'm going to weigh the reels when filled with line. Okay guys, so I got my scale out and let's weigh this Bantam when filled with line. You're looking at 8.1 ounces. Now the Chronarch, when filled with line, you are looking at 6.8 ounces. Okay, so the Metanium, when filled with line, you're looking at 6.4 ounces. So the reason I'm weighing the reels when filled with line is when you were working at a top water bait, or maybe like a jerk bait, where you're constantly, you know, moving your wrists, then it does make a difference. I could tell a big difference between working the top water with this and this versus the Bantam. And that's because of the overall weight. As you can see, it weighs about 1.5 ounces more than this Metanium, and at least 1 ounce more than the Chronarch. So out in the water, you can definitely feel that difference between these three reels. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these spools out and weigh the spools filled with line. Okay guys, so I pulled the spools out and I got all the side plates off. So let's see what these spools weigh filled with line. Okay, so here's the Chronarch spool. Now it does not have a bearing on it. 21.56 grams. Okay, now here's the Bantam spool. Now it does have a bearing, and the bearing I believe weighs 1.5 grams. So 20.8. So you're looking at 21.3 grams for the Bantam without the bearing. 21.5. So there's really not much in it between the two, the Bantam and the Chronarch, when the spools are filled with line. And here's the Metanium. Now once again, this is the 70 capacity JDM spool. It's got a bearing on it. You're looking at 20.15. So you're looking at 18.6 grams. So roughly, let me see here, roughly almost 3 grams lighter than these other two spools. And I'm weighing these just to illustrate a point that I'll show you guys later on. Now while we got the scale out, I'm going to go ahead and weigh the lures that I threw. Here's the jig with the trailer. 21.95. So this thing was over 3/4 ounce. Here's the square bills that I threw. One of them weighs 8 grams, so a little bit over 1/4 ounce. The other one weighs 8.4 grams. So wow, this one actually weighs 1/2 gram, almost 1/2 gram more, and it's actually a little bit smaller. So anyone that was casting this may have had a little bit of an advantage, being that this was heavier, therefore a little bit denser because it is a little smaller. Okay, so the JACKALL Mudsucker topwater lure, weighing in at 14.8 for this one, and 15 for this one. So there's a little discrepancy there in weight, but a little bit over 1/2 ounce. Okay guys, now that we've got all the weighing done, let's talk about my thoughts on what happened out on the water. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into 5 sections. and each section is going to have a winner. Now the first section, of course, is casting, and then pitching, and then smoothness, and then sensitivity, and then the fifth one being ergonomics. Okay, so let's get to it. Now the first section is going to be casting, and let's talk about the 1/4 ounce square bill. As you can see, this crawfish colored square bill is actually a little heavier and a little smaller, therefore denser than this other square bill here. So whoever was casting this was going to theoretically have the advantage. Okay, so let's talk about who I think casted the 1/4 ounce square bill the best, and I'm going to have to give that slightly, ever so slightly, to the Metanium. It's kind of shocking because I thought this is where the Metanium would shine, would be this lighter lure, and that I would see a bigger difference in casting between the two, and I didn't. And I say the Metanium won because it was throwing this lighter square bill against the Bantam, and also the fact that when the Bantam and the Metanium were going head to head, as you can see, there was no wind. The wind had died down and the water was glass. So I'm gonna give that win slightly to the Metanium, and I'm gonna have to give a tie to, well, I'm gonna say the Bantam maybe casted it a little bit better consistently than the Chronarch. So Bantam comes in second, and I'm gonna say 2.5 will go to the Chronarch, because there's really no difference that I could tell. And of course, that's why I'm gonna take these guys out on the field and do some actual measurements to see if we can see a difference between the two. So first place, second place, and 2.5 place when it comes down to the 1/4 ounce square bill. Okay, now let's get to the 1/2 ounce topwater JACKALL Mudsucker. And to me, the clear winner was the Metanium. This is where its light spool showed its class over the others, as it consistently almost hit the other side of the pond or the other shore more times than the other reels. And there was a lot left as far as distance goes in the Metanium, and actually there was a lot left as far as distance goes with all 3 of these reels, but the Metanium, you can tell the spool spun up faster and casted a little bit freer than the other 2, probably due to its light weight. Now, second place is going to go to the Bantam, as I feel that it consistently hit longer distances than the Chronarch. Now the Chronarch comes in third place, but that's not really a bad thing in this company. I think all 3 of them were hitting 50-yard casts with that lure, but it seemed that the Bantam was a little bit more consistent in long bombing than the Chronarch, at least in my eyes. If you guys saw something different, then let me know in the comments. Okay, so pitching. The only thing I pitched was this jig and trailer that weighed 3/4 of an ounce, and I'm gonna say they're all 3 a tie, because I can't really say that I consistently pitched farther with any of the reels. They were all consistent, probably averaging between 10 and 12 yards. As far as ease of pitching, I couldn't tell a difference either, and it's partly because this jig is so heavy. Now what I should have done, and I kicked myself for not doing it, is I should have rigged up a weightless plastic or brought a smaller jig that weighed about 1/4 of an ounce, and maybe we would have seen a separation in performance then, and perhaps maybe the Metanium would have casted a little farther or pitched a little farther or a little easier than the other 2. But as far as I could tell, I can see no difference between the 3 in pitching. And once again, if you saw something in your eyes any different, then let me know in the comments. Okay, let's talk about the smoothness. Okay, this is kind of controversial right here, but in third place for smoothness, in my opinion, when I was burning in these little square bills, now you wouldn't think that this provides any much resistance being so small, but when you're burning these in, trying to get them in as fast as you can to save time, then it does provide a lot of resistance. And I'm gonna have to say smoothness in third place goes to the Metanium MGL. And it's kind of controversial because this is the most expensive reel here. Now, let me tell you why I think this came in third place. Now, don't get it twisted. This thing is silky, buttery smooth, and it's going to be smoother than 99.9% of the other reels out on the market. It's just that in this company, the little things seem to catch up to it. Now, what I think is that the handle tolerance is not as tight on the Metanium as the other two. And also the fact that even though all three have micro module gears of the same level, meaning the second tier, the main gear on the Metanium is made of aluminum, while the main gear on the Bantam and the Chronarch is made of brass. And it's kind of universally known that brass is a little smoother and softer than aluminum, giving a smoother cranking experience. Okay, so here's the tough part, and I'm gonna have to go on personal preference on this one. And second place for smoothness is gonna be the Bantam, and it's very, very close. Now, the reason I give this second place is that the smoothness is noticeably different on this than the Chronarch. And it's tighter, it's glassier, it's more precise, and it feels like, I've said several times before, it feels like a Conquest, but just not quite as smooth as a Conquest, but it feels on that very rigid, precise level when turning the handle, and there's resistance on the line. Now, it does have a little bit of that Shimano buttery smoothness, and I think it's due to these knobs. But once again, it's a very close between the Bantam, and the winner, in my opinion, of course this is personal preference, is the Chronarch MGL. Now, it wins due to the fact that it has more of that Shimano buttery smoothness that I like. The handle tolerance is better on this than the Metanium, and yeah, it feels like a slightly more refined version of the CURADO K when turning the handle. And once again, this is my preference, guys. You know, you may prefer a more rigid precision smoothness that the Bantam has, but for me, I like the Chronarch MGL when it comes to its type of smoothness. Okay, so let's talk about a subject that's usually reserved for rods, but we're going to talk about that with the reels, and that's sensitivity. Now, the differences between these reels can only be attributed to the reels because they were using the exact same rods and the exact same line. So when dragging that jig, as far as what I could feel and how many things I could feel on the bottom, last place in sensitivity is gonna have to go to the Bantam. I know that's kind of a shock because Shimano really touts the advantages of having the all aluminum core solid body that only has 3 parts that pick it up versus the 5 or 6 parts that may make up these other 2 reels. But yeah, I could not feel as much as I could feel, and I could not detect as many different things on the bottom as I could with the other 2. And the Metanium would have to come in second place as far as what I could feel on the bottom. And it's not that much better than the Bantam, it's just that I could feel maybe one or two things a little bit more on the Metanium than with the Bantam. So these two are close in sensitivity in my hands. Now the clear winner is the Chronarch. I could feel way more things, a lot more ticks on the bottom. And when I say ticks, I mean when you're dragging over mud, you know, it feels really mushy. And you might feel a hump or two, but if you run into like a stick or a rock, it kind of has a tick. Now, it was feeling way more things that I could feel compared to the other two when dragging that jig. And also, for some reason, I could feel this vibration coming through the line that I could not feel with the other two reels. It's a very slight vibration when cranking the handle, dragging that jig, that was transmitting through the line into the rod and the reel. And it was a clear victory in sensitivity for the Chronarch. There's no doubt about it. Now once again, the tables could be turned if I, drug the jig on a different kind of bottom. I think the reason why the Chronarch felt more sensitive is because of the composite body. Now this is not CI4+, it's some kind of unknown composite that Shimano has made this of, that's supposed to be, a little bit more rigid than the CI4+. And I think the Bantam came in last because of the weight. The more metal, the more that sensations will be dampened. And of course, this is made of aluminum and this is made of magnesium. It's probably why I could feel just a tad bit more on the Metanium. Okay, the final piece of the puzzle, or the final section, is the ergonomics. Now, ergonomics is personal preference, of course. So we're gonna have to go by my personal preference. And last place in ergonomics, despite being the smallest reel, is gonna be the Bantam. Why do I say that? As you can see, this thing is noticeably way smaller than the Metanium and the Chronarch. This is a nearly 50 size body, right? Now I say ergonomically it comes in last place because when trying to walk the dog with the JACKALL Mudsucker, I could really feel that extra ounce or ounce and a half in weight when working the rod. So if this thing was an ounce lighter, or maybe even ounce and a half, even half an ounce lighter, I wouldn't say it would place any higher, but it would definitely help with the wrist when working that top water. And it didn't help that that rod it was on was heavy as well. So second place is gonna have to go to the Chronarch. Now the Chronarch is very similar in size to the Metanium, as you can see. They're literally the same size, but it is a slightly heavier, and I like the top plate feel of the Metanium more than the Chronarch. So of course that leaves the Metanium. As far as ergonomics go, at least in my opinion, it's smoother up here, and it is the lightest of the three, and you can definitely feel it versus the Bantam. The Bantam weighs about an ounce and a half more. Okay, so ergonomics wise, working that top water, first place Metanium, second place Chronarch, third place Bantam, sheerly due to how heavy it is. But that's the price you pay when you have an all aluminum reel. Okay guys, now as far as casting ergonomics, that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Casting ergonomics is going to go like this.
Last place for the Bantam because it's heavier, and something about the shape of these other two just make it easier to cast a little bit harder, in my opinion. Maybe it's the weight. Second place is going to go to the Chronarch. And of course, first place in casting ergonomics as far as comfort of casting is going to go to this Metanium. Very close between this and this. Now, one thing that I can tell you, when you got the thumb bar pressed, the thumb bar on the Metanium and the Chronarch feels a lot better, well, noticeably better than on the Bantam. I think the thumb bar on the Bantam actually sits higher than the spool, while with the Metanium it's a little bit more level with the spool, and you can feel that little difference switching from reel to reel with your thumb. Okay guys, so when it comes down to it, if I had my choice to pick just one reel out of all these, well, out of these three, the clear choice is going to be, for me, the Metanium. Casts a little bit better. I like the ergonomics better and the weight, and I like the looks better. And second place would have to go to the Chronarch because it's basically a budget Metanium. And then third place for me personally would have to go to the Bantam, simply due to the weight. I like lightweight reels. Once you go lightweight reels, it's hard to go back, especially when you're fishing them back to back. Okay guys, so I hope that helps anyone out as far as making a decision between these three reels or what the differences may be. Now of course, this is all just based on my experience. Your experience could be different, but all right guys, thanks a lot.